for the particular RPM of the overall difficulty in laser that you maybe wouldn't be able to get in stable. So there's still going to be a little bit of deviation there. But as long as you're aware of that possibility.
Well, yeah, I mean, it relies on us getting things matching to the best we can, right? So, like Frenzy's PR, which changes bonus to be awarded per half spins or something. The
No,
other
he
PR,
just adds the two bonus, two extra
no,
spins
the
before
other
bonus.
PR, the update spinner ticks calculation method.
Oh, okay.
Or the one that you said is fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what
So
about
Yeah, I
that?
like
think
those. Go on.
yeah, I think that one is fine. Like it achieves the goal of, making the same cap achievable on both, regardless of mechanics. I also maybe I phrased the comment wrong or something, but I did explain the same. I think basically the same thing to Frenzy on the channel, on the OS channel. That the point was that just the point was that we should get the caps level so that the same scores are theoretically achievable numerically wise, and probably maybe we can just ignore the mechanics themselves, like the weird velocity things or the fact that there's a two spin gap between normal and bonus spins, and just get the caps level and just accept the fact that it might be slightly easier or more difficult to
Yeah,
get.
the only thing I want to add there is that I want to make sure we haven't made the way spinner scoring feels worse in laser. Like I don't think we put enough thought into where things are right now. Like as Smoogie said, the velocity thing isn't there, and I know Smoogie is working on the anti-cheese, which is going to change that a bit. But I think at the end of the day, once we've got the spinner RPM caps in and everything, we should do a second pass, like automate spinner input on both stable and laser and see how it looks, see how it feels, and also see what the difference is and whether we need to potentially adjust, like potentially apply some kind of multiplier in laser, like to get things more on par than they are right now. Like I'm hoping we can avoid that, but if it turns out that the two games are producing insanely different spin speeds from the same input, then we can just fix that, right, in laser to bring it close to what it was.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know if that's as simple as a linear transformation, but
Yeah.
I think that's a bridge that we'll figure out how to cross when we get to it.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's going to be different if you're like changing the velocity you spin as you go on in the spin, more so with stables implementation, but I would only be interested in comparing like a constant speed spin just to get a ballpark. Okay, I think our first goal should be getting the cap implemented.
well, the cap is already there. But if we do something like what Dumi suggested, we're also gonna have to implement that into stable as well, right?
I guess, yeah.
If you want cross compatibility and
yeah, for sure.
which is a whole other bag of worms. But yeah.
Well, if it's just a score cap, that's easy, right?
Score cap?
I mean, you can say RPM, but at the end of the day, RPM converts to max score you can get from a spinner.
As in, yeah, sure, but what happens when you run a replay in stable or in laser? that.
Well, my assumption was we were going to be like finding the max score for each for the RPM for the spinner, and then just limiting to that. Like I wouldn't see the current RPM being spun being limited in
That's
laser.
fine, but I mean, that means that at the score screen, what you're going to see from running the replay is going to be different from the actual score.
You mean running a stable replay in laser?
Or a stable replay in stable, right? Unless we use some sort of like, I don't know, replay version to,
for previous replays, I see.
Yeah, like what happens if you run that Discord prints the replay or something,
Well, I mean, aren't we going to be reprocessing all these scores anyway and implementing the cap in old scores?
Are we?
I would hope so.
Because that's also a bit of a can of worms. Like,
well, if the end goal is to like port back score VX to stable and get everything on the same kind of playing field, then I feel like that's inevitable.
Well, the problem is that then you'd need to port velocity to laser, right? Because we can't really calculate those scores easily with stable. Right, we would have to use it.
Would you? I assume it would just be whatever. Let the cap be the new cap. Keep the mechanics as they were, and just take it. I mean, just
yeah, that's what I was
close
thinking.
enough.
And like worst case scenario, we run the replays with using laser, and that's still an option we can go with.
So, like, okay, we reprocess these a spinner score with laser's linear mode, and then that person views that replay in stable, and they have a different score than what's on the leaderboard.
Well, not if we've updated stable to. If we have updated stable to have the new cap, then they're probably going to see it be capped anyway at that point.
It's even more difficult than that because we don't have all the mechanics of stable either, like 1-to-1.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like this is still overthinking it, and we just should implement the cap and implement the cap in stable and deal with these like spinners potentially being like slightly off when viewing the replays in stable, but in laser it's going to look correct. I mean, I can see where you're coming from too, because that small group of like 100,
right?
Hey,
it's an irrelevant
the small
number.
group of 100 people are going to like rage at any changes to spinners, and especially if they don't match replays.
Well, I mean, if we want to kill the spinner cheese saga, we're gonna piss them off anyway, right?
I mean, it just means that every single replay, bar none, that has a spinner in it is not going to match the leaderboard score in stable. And that number, that total score number, is going to be irrelevant going to laser because laser is going to be converted to score v2. So it's a completely different number altogether. So then you have,
but I'm confused. So are you saying that we don't backport score VX to stable?
No. I mean, we can, I suppose.
Because that's kind of the only way I can see going forward here. Otherwise, I mean, it's not just spinners, it's going to be all scores which are different on stable and laser.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, unless you just went and reprocessed literally every score set ever, this is a problem that we're gonna have anyway. Because we don't have a lossless way to convert old scores to score v2 even, let alone score vx, without approximations or some kind of data loss, don't we? It's gonna be different on the leaderboard anyway.
The conversion's pretty close too. But I don't think it considers spinners right now.
This SCOV2 conversion?
Yeah.
It does. At least my version does. I don't know what the new one does. I haven't looked through the PR. I've given up on it.
Well, the new one doesn't change much.
Then it should probably still consider it.
Oh, wait, no, it does. The conversion is completely new.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, from my perspective, the only path forward I see is that we do this conversion, like we change all the scores to VX and implement what we need in stable to make this happen, and therefore stuff is going to roughly match. And if it doesn't match close enough, then we use replays to reprocess stuff for the top 50 or top 100 or whatever. But just to touch on what you said earlier, that like if we don't backport score VX to stable, then every score is going to be different that has a spinner. I don't think that's correct, because any score which is hitting the cap, which I'm guessing is going to be a lot of them, are going to match, right?
What?
Like any score which hits the spin cap that we're implementing is going to match on stable and laser, because they're both hitting the cap, right?
Well, no, because stable has two different, like, it's a different score. It's score V1. Like, the only way that can happen is if you port everything to stable. There's basically going to be three, like... like, what I assume is if we were to reprocess every single score with every single replay to recalculate spinners, then we're going to have to implement score V1. Either implement score V1 into laser, implement spinner velocity into laser, and then run that through all the replays to get a good score V1 value for the leaderboard for stable.
I feel like you're missing, like, what I'm saying is, and I think what Spaceman is also saying, is that they should be close enough that it doesn't matter. Like, they should be able to hit the spin cap.
But like,
and therefore, we don't need to port all this stuff across to laser from stable.
Maybe it's just irrelevant, because hitting the spin cap doesn't mean anything in either. Like,
I don't know. I'm explicitly accepting that playback might be wrong, because I assumed it would be anyway. For a whole mess of other reasons, including the whole thing that we're doing with the changing of the score algorithm.
Yeah.
Well,
and
replay playback is its own
it's
thing.
even harder to assess what quote unquote matches. Like, how do you even assess that? Because currently, right now, if you consider matches as player X that passes a spinner in stable, passes a spinner in laser, it quote unquote matches right now. That part matches. And if we have a RPM cap, likely the same thing is still going to be true. But then, like, quote unquote matching any more beyond that, like for bonus points, is not easily accessible. And because scoring is completely different in terms of the amount of points that you get, it's not easily accessible, right?
Yeah,
like, I don't know what the goal of
be
matching is.
My hope is that it's close enough that it doesn't matter.
But like, what is quote unquote close enough? Like, what does that mean?
Well, as in, Frenzy has made changes to try and make the bonus scoring the same as stable, or match closely. I think we should make as many changes as we need to, and then if it's not matching close enough, then I mean, it's not like the bonus score is non-linear to the clear score. So if what you say holds for clear score, then it should also hold for bonus, that we can roughly match them. Like, can you explain why you think the bonus is different to clear? Because you just said that clearing a spinner on one also clears on the other, or should clear on the other.
Because how do you assess bonus? Like it's
What's the
fundamentally
number
it's
of extra
bonus, right?
spins?
So let's rewind a bit then. What you mean by matching is that a player getting X number of spins on stable should get X number of spins on laser.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because
As close
that's a
as we can.
whole different conversation, right? Like none of this is going to laser could have infinite number of points as long as the final algorithm results in the same number of points for the same number of spins in stable, right? Which means that we do need something like a limit to laser's RPM so that players aren't able to get, a max spin and all the bonus points when they're not able to do that with, a 400 RPM spin in stable. That's a different conversation, right? Am I making sense or?
So you're talking about the 477 limit in stable.
So, okay, Waluigi, it's possible to match stable's max possible rotations by adjusting the cap and bonus score per spin. This is exactly what I'm saying. There's a bit of like misinformation here because it seems like what Pepe wants to match is not the max possible rotations, but the user's rotations.
I mean, I get what you're getting at. The example would be that you spin 477 above 477, but on stable you'd get like half the spins because of the cap, and on laser with
You get
no
all the
cap,
points. Yeah.
you'd get all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Waluigi, I'm saying we don't need to match with rotations. Yeah, but that's not what Pepe's saying. Like Pepe just said that we should be able to match the user's score, the user's spins. So that's what I'm trying to assess. Like I'm trying to assess like what the specific goal is here because it changes the way that things go about, right?
So the last thing I said, can I get confirmation on that? You're talking about the 477 cap on stable versus that not being existing on laser?
No. So what I want to know is what your specific goal is to quote unquote match spinners between stable and laser. Like what does matching mean to you? Like what I want you to be very specific in terms of what needs to match for them to be considered matching in your mind. Is it
Okay,
just that
so
the total number of points needs to match? Is it that the user's score needs to match? Or what?
score is a completely different thing. Score is that.
Score being the number of points that the user gets. That's it, like a normalized value.
Okay, so here's a few things I can say. One is RPM should not be capped on laser. Full stop. Okay? Reasoning behind that is that the 477 RPM cap on stable is almost impossible to hit. If someone's able to get higher than that on laser, then sure they can get extra spins from it. That's fine. Doesn't matter if that doesn't match stable. It's such an edge case that we don't need to care about it. Can we agree on that?
Sure.
Okay.
I mean,
So that's the case where a user is spinning so fast that stable would cap them and laser doesn't. We don't need to change that on stable. We don't need to change that on laser. So the remaining things are how do we implement this cap is I guess what you want to know, and what I've just said is it shouldn't be capped on RPM, it should be capped on score. And then your question is that won't match stable, but I think that's out of scope of this localized discussion, because I think the larger picture is that we want to get scores matching on stable so that leaderboards can be comparable, and so that switching from stable to laser or back is, it's not two different scoring algorithms that you're looking at. Does that help? I guess not.
Like to
okay.
try and bridge these, I think that what is being said is that we should match the maximum achievable number of points for a spinner, period. Don't need to care about the cap. If it's easier to spin, well, maybe not. If a stable score would exceed the cap and get capped, then the same score on laser can get the points that the stable score wouldn't because of the cap, and that's fine.
So I'll go into a bit more detail. So there's three things I see which can cause a difference in the obtained score from a spinner between stable and laser. One is that we don't have the linear, the number of spins on stable and laser. So if a user is spinning at the same speed on stable and laser, there's three things which can be different. A is if the user's spinning above 477, then they're going to get more score on laser than stable. We've already ruled that out. I think we can agree that that one is fine to ignore. The second is that the linear awarded score for the same RPM on stable and laser is different, as in laser is giving more or less for the same spin speed. I think that's something that we need to assess after we implement the cap and then address by adding a multiplier or changing things around. The third is that stable has a velocity applied, which gives a slight disadvantage when spinning up to the velocity, and then it can change things up depending on if the user slows down or speeds up. At a constant speed, that means that laser is currently giving more spin than stable, and I think that is fine to also ignore, and we can account for that in the second one I mentioned, as in adjusting a multiplier across the same spin speed on the same spinner on laser and stable to maybe get them closer to being in line within a certain allowable error.
Well, number two that you mentioned there is a misunderstanding, because it is not different for the same RPM.
Okay, well then that's fine. We can cross that out. I wasn't sure if that's
But you
already
understand
on.
that the same RPM is not, because of point 3, it's not the same RPM. Right?
Yeah, so there's a slight discrepancy.
Well, a huge discrepancy. Someone that could be spinning at 430 RPM on stable could be spinning way above 477 on laser. And they could get the full bonus points on laser.
Wait, 30 to 477?
430 RPM.
Oh, 430, okay.
Be spinning above 477 on laser.
Right.
So the point that I'm bringing up is...
So this is like on a short spinner where they can get up to full velocity very fast.
Sure, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess the longer the spinner, the less influence it has.
Sure, I mean spin rate typically goes down over time, but sure.
Yeah.
But so that's the thing. But then if we were to cap it, because I suppose the cap is more to fit your other goal of preventing the cheating, right?
Also just rebalancing spinners, I think. Like, sure, fixing the cheesing is one thing, but I mean, for a normal player, spinners are not the best mechanic, right? I
Okay,
think
okay, that's my mistake. I agree. Like for easier maps and easy difficulties, it should be achievable, right?
it shouldn't be cheesable.
It should be achievable. Every player should be
Yeah,
able to get the
but
full
no,
badge.
but not even for easies. Even for like hard stuff. Currently, getting the full spin is basically impossible
Sure.
unless you're cheesing it, and
Yeah.
I don't
Okay.
think that should be the case.
Okay. So I agree with that.
The only argument against that is that it's used as a tiebreaker thing, and therefore it should be uncapped, which is what the people that say spinners should be uncapped are using as an argument. But I don't know about that. I think my subjective opinion is that it shouldn't be used for tie-breaking cases anymore, even if my opinion may have differed 20 years ago.
Yeah,
I think
okay, so
this is a rhythm game, and
I'm not really considering other people's opinions
yeah,
um at all here. I'm not considering like the cheating and stuff or anything.
Yeah.
But if we were to cap it to let's say that OD10 was 430 RPM cap as the proposal was, or maybe even more than that. I don't know.
yeah.
Then someone, and we were to cap that on stable and laser as well. If someone were to spin like 400 RPM on stable, then they could get over 430 in laser, and they could get the full bonus in laser, but not in stable. Is that the direction that you see? Or should the player that gets 400 RPM on stable get the equivalent amount of score in laser? Because I think that is I think that will require implementation of some sort of like, I don't know if it's velocity or whether we can do it any different way in laser. If we were to need the same amount of.
Yeah, as I said, I think we shouldn't worry about velocity for now.
Okay.
Well, to put it in more perspective, maybe I recall seeing some of the surveys. I don't recall exactly which one about the leaderboard unification, saying that they're fine with things potentially being a little easier on laser than they were on stable. And on that angle, I think we're good with spinners. Like the cap stuff, the removal of the cap, maybe being able to spin a bit faster than laser. It all works, and it works in our favor in that respect. So I also agree that maybe we shouldn't worry about that too much until it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
Just avoid a situation where you literally cannot beat a play from stable on laser or the converse because of the score caps not being matching, because you can't physically get that much score out of a spinner.
Yeah,
Does
and
that
I
make
mean, Swiggy,
sense?
I get your concerns about like replay playback not matching, but I don't know. Like, we have so many other issues right now that I think spinners matching in replays, where even in stable they hardly match. I think it's the least of our concerns. I don't think anyone's going to care if spinners act differently when you play the replay back on laser.
Well, the conversation was a bit different.
What, because they're going to get different scores as a result when the
Okay.
replay plays?
So in that case, to summarize, it appears like Frenzy's PR, which adds 2 spin gaps before awarding bonus score, is pretty irrelevant, because we don't care about the the amount of score, but the amount of RPM in that case.
Put it this way, I would see it as more of a how it feels thing, because in stable there's a certain delay before you start getting bonus, and am I correct in thinking that this changes that in laser? That PR changes the delay before the first bonus arrives?
I don't think it actually does. I think it just reduces the amount of. No, I think it just adds 2 more ticks, 2 more normal ticks before the bonus.
Yeah, so wouldn't that increase the delay before you start getting bonus?
Yeah, sure.
So I would want to see how that feels, because people have come to expect the delay until they start getting bonus, and if this aligns that more than with stable, then I don't see a reason not. If it feels better, then I don't see a reason not to have it match. I wouldn't care as much about the scoring implications of it.
I would say that that's something that people are less used to than velocity, to be honest. I didn't know that it existed before I looked into code.
Well, you don't know it exists, but you know the rough delay between a clear and the bonus starting
Not
to show
really.
up.
I don't really care about it. I just spin.
Well, I know that I spin to a certain bonus and then stop spinning. So,
and to be clear, it's 2 half spins, I think, right? Maybe it.
So it's
maybe
one extra spin before the bonus starts.
Title says 2 spins, 4 spins.
Oh, two full spins. I don't know.
Yes, I'd want to test that and see how it feels before dismissing it. Because this is the kind of change where there's no real reason not to add it. It's not like we're implementing a hack or anything. It's just changing timings. And if that's what people have come to expect, and it's not objectively worse, or it's not even like, if people are like, I don't care, whatever, then maybe we should match stable just to get the mapping of scoring to bonus scoring closer.
I guess it's not objectively worse, but it does complicate explaining spinners, you know?
Well, it doesn't if you approach them the way you do, which is you just spin.
Sure.
Well, I mean, if... Yeah, sorry, go on.
No, you go.
I mean, if we're recontextualizing this change to the gap as a more of a gameplay feel thing than a score balance thing, then I guess the conversation is as to whether we want to do that, add the spin back because it feels okay.
Also, it's not just feel, but it's also the way the game sounds. Like the silence period between the clear and the bonuses starting to tick in. I don't know. I personally like how stable feels for that. I don't have enough experience comparing spinners between laser and stable to notice that difference, and maybe the fact that I haven't noticed until now is a sign that it doesn't matter as much as maybe I'm thinking it does. But I'd want to test it out and see if I can notice the difference in disco prints on using a mouse.
Someone that's spinning 300 RPM would see about 400 milliseconds of a difference. Just...
Yeah. It's quite a bit.
I doubt it. I doubt it.
It's half a second, almost.
Yeah.
It's not nothing.
I don't know. But okay, the idea is that isn't... it isn't matching, right? Like, the purpose of that PR isn't to match it. The purpose of the PR is coming from the perspective of matching stable, but the idea brought up here is that it's more of a feel thing and that it should be treated in that fashion. which is not where
That's my take on it.
which is where I believe the PR is not coming from. Like it's not coming from that idea.
Sure, but if we can satisfy both, then why not?
Sure.
Right. And if we decide we don't want that, then for scoring purposes, we presumably will have to take 2 spinner ticks away from laser spinners to keep the cap consistent, I guess.
I'm not sure what the point of that is, though.
Well, it would be to make the maximum score achievable on a spinner equal between laser and stable, wouldn't it? Or am I fundamentally
I guess it
misunderstanding?
depends on how you're calculating the cap. I think Spaceman's suggesting that the cap is calculated based on the number of scoring ticks and bonus ticks.
That's what I'm getting from the. Well, that's what I'm getting from the description, because the description says that a player could gain 2 extra bonus ticks on any spinner in any map compared to stable. So that seems like a balanced consideration.
Well, I mean, that's before.
Well, yeah, but what does that actually affect? Like, realistically, like scoring is already completely different. The mechanics of spinners are already completely different. What is that actually affecting?
Yeah, and Wallavucci is saying that the spinner bonus is 50 in laser versus 1100 in stable.
Yeah, well, sure, that's a part of it, but from a
Wallavucci, that's more in like the scoring side of things, which I think is kind of a different issue to what we're currently discussing. I think we need to split those issues apart, because if we're looking to match scoring, then that's a discussion for another day, and it comes with.
Yeah, it's like I don't think you can compare scoring in stable versus laser. And
unless we backport.
For spinners.
Unless we backport.
Sure.
Which there was already talk that we might need to do anyway.
I don't see a way around that right now. Unless we're looking to split up leaderboards. I think we've gone too far in the direction of score v2 and getting stuff in a way that we can actually backport, to the point where it's inevitable that we do that to keep the game, to keep the community as one.
Also, to be fair, the tick counts do match. Like, it's not like those 2 extra ticks there that Frenzy added are, 2 extra on top of what was already there. They are taking away from the bonus ticks, and they're just making them normal ticks. It doesn't change the count at all.
I mean, it doesn't change the count, but it does it change the count of normal
and bonus
spins and bonus spins, which in turn affects the max score, which, ignoring the fact that the scores are different right now, but if we had equal footing,
if we had equal implementations, or roughly implementations minus velocity,
then that would mean if there's numerical score values of normal spins and bonus spins would match, that would mean that laser spinners get 2 extra bonus ticks worth of score.
But that's in a circular argument sort of fashion, the only way that we would see that is if we were to backport laser to stable, and then so for some reason, whoever knows why, we would keep stable's logic for spinners, which doesn't make any sense.
Right, so you're saying we also nuke velocity when we do the backport?
We would have to, right?
Well, then we can make the match 1-1.
I thought that's what you were suggesting by backporting. I don't know what you're thinking.
Yeah, I mean, backporting, but also, like, if spinners are too hard to fix, then just making sure the cap is the same was enough for me, is what I'm trying to get at. But if we can backport spinners to not have velocity, and the thing about doing that is I don't know how easy it's going to be to do that, especially with the anti-cheese stuff you're adding to it, and how that's going to fit in with stables timing and whatnot. It's like in a worst case scenario where stables spin spin to score input to score output is ever so slightly different, or maybe not slightly different, 430 versus 480 or whatever you mentioned. I still see that as being within roughly okay. You know, as Spaceman said, that in that case, you're still going to be able to get higher scores in laser, which is not too bad.
Yeah, I'm not saying I necessarily care. I'm just bringing it up mostly as a thing that would happen, but maybe not one we need to care about. Don't know.
Um, so just to reiterate, if we just add the cap, as Demi suggested, just a difficulty range cap of like 150 BPM or 230 BPM at OD0, 430 at OD10, and just do that for stable and laser, and call it a day, and not do either of these two other changes, these two other PRs that Frenzy has open right now, would there be any issue with that? I mean, the update spinner text calculation to better match with our stable, that PR would be completely useless anyway because the implementation would be different. But the other PR as well, like on its own, it's not like the quote unquote cross compatibility aspect of it. I don't think is the argument here. Or
Yeah, but sure. But also, I see these two PRs as going in a better direction potentially. Like if we can, sure, it's not going to match, and that's fine. I'm fine with that. But if we can get it to match closer via some simple changes, then as long as they're not hacky changes, I'm not against them. I'm not.
but from
with
a purely
yeah,
from a purely like feel perspective, right? Not from like a scoring perspective or anything like that. And so that could be done in like any number of different ways, right?
Feel and score. Like as I said, like we're not aiming for perfect, but if we can get them to match a bit closer, then why not?
Hmm. I guess it's just I find it weird that we would effectively implement what I would say is a hack. You might disagree with that, but it is complicating spinners in a way that I feel is unnecessary. Um, just to make them feel a little, just to make them match a little bit closer, and not just in terms of feel, but in terms of like scoring. Apparently,
Like honestly, if we're one of our goals is just to match stable at this point, I don't see it like this is. I wouldn't call it a hack. It's part of game design. You design how long between the clear and the bonus starts, and that's what that's why this originally exists. Is I mean, I think I was probably trying to match Ostatakai Ondan in terms of delay, because I think it had an even longer delay between clearing and bonus. You had to spin like crazy to get to the bonus point. But I would call it game design, not hacks.
hmm.
And yeah, I'm not sure about. You mentioned that the other PR, the updates phonetic calculation method to better match with us table. You said that that's not relevant if we implement the cap. Can you explain that a bit, because I'm not too sure I follow.
I'm sorry. Say that again.
You mentioned that the 24661, the update spinner ticks calculation method to better match with stable. you said that was invalid if the cap is being applied, the Doomy cap.
Yeah,
Can you
Because
explain that?
because this is changing the like all of this is going to go away if we do that. It's going to be a
Right,
different
because the cap is
calculation.
going to apply to the same code.
Yeah, well, I assume
The
just the
minimum.
code will be different. Like
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
all, yeah. I mean, it might not be different, but yeah, we'd have to see. I have to do a bit of calculations to figure out the RPM values for the
Yeah.
minimum
Right.
rotations per second.
I see. No, I misunderstood this PR to an extent because of the rename from whole spins to current spins. I thought that was actually changing something in the drawable spinner class, but it's not.
No, that's just irrelevant.
Okay. Yeah, well, Abuchi, we're not because the scoring is completely off the charts different. So we're mostly talking about matching game mechanics, matching timings, and because one of the goals here, one of the potential ways forward is to backport score VX to stable, in which case having them match closely will mean that when we backport that, it's going to match even closer. So yes, it's mostly about tick counts because that's what spinners are calculated in as ticks. Or rotations in stable. They're not actually called ticks, but let's go with that. Frenzy's PR is not changing things to be in terms of half spins. It's just confusing. It's just changing the actual the cap basically, the current cap in laser, not the new cap which we're looking at.
Yeah, it's not changing anything gameplay wise. It's just changing the calculation of the number of half spins, or the number of half spins or number of full spins, whichever one you want to think of it. Like,
Consensus is to merge both. Well, yes, I guess we can merge both, but then Frenzies is maybe going to be overwritten by the incoming changes.
well, no, Frenzies has to go in. That's probably going to come later.
Yeah.
It needs a PR. Let's need an issue made for it and stuff.
Yeah, sure.
I just looked at our stream and it has kind of the same thing with the delay. It looks to be 1.5 spins delay if I understand this code correctly.
Right. Stream doesn't have velocity, does it? I'm 99% sure I took that out. I was like, fuck this shit.
It does.
It does?
Yep.
Is it like toned back or something? Because I know, at least on screen, it matches your finger 1-to-1.
Oh, it's in different calculations. I don't know how it works. So
Yeah, okay. I think it has velocity for like slowing down from the max spin, but the speeding up velocity is almost instant.
it might just be a velocity in terms of the calculation.
Right.
Like the
Anyway,
number
irrelevant.
it might just be that. I don't know.
Yeah, so I guess we can go with merging both. I still want to test out this 2-spin gap thing and see if I can notice the difference first before blindly merging. But at least as a step towards, like even like Smoogie says, not from a scoring perspective, but I think even from a scoring perspective, having this merged in as a starting point is not a bad thing. Regardless of the direction we go, it's something we can like blindly merge and be like, okay, things are matching stable slightly more than they were before, and we can work from here. Can you agree with that, Smoogie?
Sure.
Like maybe we'll roll it back in the future, and maybe we'll remove it from stable if it turns out that we don't want it at all. But
yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with the PRs, but I just wanted to figure out what your point was to maintain cross compatibility,
Yeah.
like specifically.
Yeah, when I say that, it's relying on us also backporting scoring. And potentially backporting spinner changes.
Okay.
Just as like a high level thing, I think at this point, like we've tried along the way to preserve a lot of how us works in stable, like, and especially with our recent push to just implement things how stable does it. I think that's fine, but also for something like spinners where it's widely kind of hated by the community, the current mechanics, I don't think there's a reason we can't just change things up. I think people would be quite receptive to seeing any kind of change in stable, even if we do have laser as an upgrade option or whatever. I think just having a bit of things going on in the game mechanics would be seen as a positive thing.
There's a few different angles that you can take on that.
Sure. That's my angle.
As in, there's a few different considerations that you need to take on that.
Sure.
It's easy to say that just on its own.
I know.
In its silly context. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. All right. Well, I am personally done with this
Cool.
question. Is Francis? Yeah. Goodbye, Waluigi.
Waluigi's done with this as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Catches.
Later.